Well, I was going to introduce this talk by saying I was the token old guy here. But looking around the crowd, I think I'm right along. So it was about 12 years ago that I was in the process of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my extra time when I retired from United Military. And I was doing a pretty good job of collecting information. That was going well. In fact, on my desk at home, I had a stack of DAD of things that I could do, but I wasn't doing a very good job of selecting anything. The stack was just growing higher and higher. So one day I was talking to a friend at church, and she asked me if I'd ever thought about prison ministry. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, just now when you said it. And a big flashing red light came up in front of my eyes saying, no way in hell. And so I said, these guys are where they're supposed to be. I'm not in the business of making their life easy. That was my attitude. That was my good Christian attitude. And, but you know, the Holy Spirit has this way of working. Sometimes it smacks you upside the head, right? Fixing all. But other times, it's very sneaky. And in my case, the sneaky spirit was at work. I had just finished my Acts retreat at St. Peter the Apostle in Bernie, and had a really good experience. Really good experience, really energized my life, my spiritual life. But this person I was talking to said, well, there's a group up in Fredericksburg, and they're actually bringing Acts retreats into prisons. So you see how the Holy Spirit's working? I just finished my Acts retreat. He knows I'm from Missouri, so I'm really got this interested in stuff, one of the reasons for doing it. So it really mystified me how these guys were going to do Acts retreats in prison. So the Holy Spirit's got the hook. And the next thing she said is, oh, by the way, there's a group of meeting up in Fredericksburg this week. And, oh, by the way, I have the number of the guy. Okay, so I said, well, what the heck, you know? It's probably a bunch of guys with their heads in the cloud, unrealistic about their approach to this ministry. Well, all these folks see what they have to say. Look, I am kind of interested in how they do this accident. So I ended up called Larry Ray, and Larry says, tell me where the meeting is, and it's up at Jeremy Hitz's house. So I show up there. First thing I noticed when they opened the door and welcomed me in was the smell of chili. Okay, so that's a good start. So I sit down, and the next thing I do is they have me a beer. So I got beer and chili. Two of the major aspects of quality of life, right? And so things are looking pretty good. And then I talk to these guys, I'm talking to them at the table, and they're just everyday guys, you know. They're talking about their family, they're talking about their church, talking about their grandkids, and Christ, all wrapped up in one. I think, hey, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And then two more people come in. And one of them is Jeremy. And they're both dressed in camo carrying rifles. And one of them is Jeremy. And the other is our own Father Mitch Papa. And they've been out hunting. So now I got beer, chili, and popcorn. So the hook is in. So I listened to the presentation, and it sounded very interesting. I decided to go to the Conley unit and go to this Acts retreat they're putting on. Prison Acts, we're called that. And after the retreat was over, I was, those who've been on the retreat know what I'm talking about, obviously pretty impressed about what went on there. But now, I'm from Missouri, show me, and I said, these guys are just getting out of their cells, why wouldn't they come? Who we have to present to them, why wouldn't they come? And any one of them that you talk to is going to admit that. That's what are the reasons, two of the reasons they come. And I said, it won't last. So the Holy Spirit decides to send the hook. And this guy says to me, there's only one way to find out. You got to come back. The hook is in. So here I am 14 years later. And so what kept me coming back was a kind of selfish aspect of this ministry that kept me coming back. My friend Bill Walsh back there has a way of saying it we can understand, the guys really understand. He says, it's like crack cocaine. You know, once you try it, you just want more and more and more. And that's true about this ministry, but there's more to it that's very personal for me in this ministry. My spiritual life at the time was okay. You know, I was receiving communion, going to reconciliation periodically, and doing some volunteer work, so I was doing fine. But it was relatively shallow. Looking back now, it was very shallow. So this ministry has given me several aspects that have changed that dramatically. First of all, the men in white, we usually say to them that we get more out of this ministry than they do. Right up there, every volunteer out there has always said that. And it's true. But when we say it to them, they say, oh, you're trying to be nice. You know, you guys come here and visit us, is really cool. And I said, no, actually, I'm not that nice. So it's not because we're nice. It's because it's very true. There are several aspects to that that are important for me. Personally, when we present something to them, when we go in there and we bring OCIA into them, or we bring a class into them, or bring the Eucharist into them, or bring the priest and reconcile. When we do those things, after that is over, we go home. I jump in my car, maybe pick up some barbecue on the way home. We'll meet with my family, maybe go out to dinner, watch a movie that night. These guys go back to themselves. And not only do they go back to themselves, but they're in. It's important to remember when they come to our classes, when they come, we get 100 guys in the retreat. They only represent a tiny percentage of the total population of that unit. And a good chunk of the rest of that population is not friendly. Certainly not friendly to people who are becoming more spiritual. I'll tell you the story about that in a minute. So they're in that environment, seeking a relationship with Christ and doing it. So for me, they were a role model. They were kind of like saints. They were models of integrity and seeking Jesus in the roughest of environments. That was always has been very impressive to me. I'll tell you a couple of stories here in a minute. The second thing is that they have this way of asking hard questions. I bet you every volunteer in here, out here has at one point or another said, I'll get back to you on that. Because they have some tough questions, man. Derek, we'll talk about in a second. I was honored to be his sponsor for confirmation and sacraments. Derek did so in opinion. And he was a field minister with a couple of years of seminary back. You think he asked some tough questions? I was saying, I'll get back to you every time I met with you. Every time. I go home, I get on the internet, I get the catechism, I get the Bible. So we got this situation where we've got these models for us, coupled with asking us tough questions about our faith that makes us dig back into the faith. And for me, that combination was very valuable. And my spiritual life just tremendously blossomed as a result of it. So I owe that all to it. A couple of examples. Derek, you just heard about, and the questions that he asked every time I met with him were just amazing. Another guy, some of you might know, Alan Elliott, also known as Buck. Buck was one of these guys that, when you saw Buck, you knew if the poop hits the fan, you wanted to be on his side of the fan. He was one of these guys that everybody appreciated that about him, and you could tell he had that kind of people that really respected him in the unit. So Buck was sitting at my table at a retreat one night, and I noticed he wasn't talking much. I was a little concerned about stimulating him too much, but I said, so Buck, what brought you here to the retreat? He said, I want to see what you're doing with my buddy. I said, okay, I'm not sure what that means. Well, a little background. He and his buddy were notorious in Congo. This is in Congo, sorry. No, we're notorious in the Congo for bringing contraband in, for getting in fights, which they regularly won. But they were truly notorious. I found that out later. Well, his buddy, he said, I don't know what you did to my buddy, but he's just changed. And his buddy was coming to Kolbe with him. He said, he's just changed. I still like him, but he's just changed. And I said, well, there's only one way to find out. Stick around. So he did. Alan and his brother both received their sacraments and both became leaders, real leaders in the Catholic community. That is just really cool. And that brings up another aspect of this ministry. And that is we talk about the Holy Spirit a lot. I'm talking about it tonight. We talk about the Holy Spirit in His action. We talk about Him in generalities a lot of times, about the fire and the way He stimulates us, and He's the light and that sort of thing. But we get to see the Holy Spirit in action. I mean, you get to see men's lives changing in front of your eyes. The Holy Spirit in action, not just in words, in action. So that is very powerful in this ministry. At least true in a lot of ministries, it's very unique in this ministry. Another guy that I dealt with was many of you know, from Kolbe. He's one of the first guys to be receive the sacraments down in Kolbe. He was a big gang leader. This is way back in the beginning of prison days. Arnulfo, I'm sure a lot of you know Arnulfo was gang leader. He came over, and the cool thing about the gang leader coming over is a lot of people followed him. Okay, I guess I'll do that. People all come after me. So he brought an awful lot of people with him. Let me give you just one comment from Arnulfo. I still communicate with him. He's in a different unit now. Just one comment to tell you a little bit about what Arnulfo was all about. He says, I apologize for the gap in responding. As busy as I made myself seem previously, I'm much more now. It's funny that when I arrived here, I thought this would have been a good place to come out to pasture and retire. Not completely retire or do nothing, just the bare minimum, which was to facilitate a daily class of maybe an hour and a half each day. It's a good idea, but God had other plans. And I have a willing spirit, so my one class per day has jumped to a solid 3, plus an extra class on Thursday night and Saturday morning. So my 5 classes per week is now 17. I will jump to 22 within the next couple of weeks as we launch community leadership classes 5 days a week. That's our goal. And I could spend hours talking about all the other things that are important. But this is the kind of thing that these guys do when the Holy Spirit grabs hold of them. It's truly incredible and awesome to watch. So, my spiritual life has been tremendously enriched, as you can hear from this ministry. I've gotten to know and love Christ a lot more intimately and a lot stronger as a result of this ministry. And I find myself saying thank you a lot more than I used to. Thank you for all the gifts that He gives me on a regular basis, especially this ministry. And so I say to you, volunteers out there that are in the ministry, God bless you for what you do for these guys. And for those of you that may be discerning the ministry, I'd say maybe the fact that you're here is that sneaky spirit working